Welcome back to Baron's New Vegas Weapon Guides, and I must admit, to my great failure, it has been a while since the last episode. But it comes with a new series of weapons all of their own, explosives. Moving on to these series of weapons was chosen in a poll from quite a while ago. In the meantime, I have been trying to put out another video, a challenge video, but it has been a lot harder than we originally thought. So we are back with an ancient classic, the Fragmentation Grenade and Fragmentation Mine. Both have early gunpowder forms, but mankind has always looked for ways to get rid of more than one person at a time, or set a passive trap that can kill their enemies. Frag grenades have origins with the stone and ceramic jars containing Greek fire, but this is not a fragmentation grenade, just an incendiary. It wasn't until the 10th century when gunpowder as an explosive appeared in China. Gunpowder had possibly existed in some form in China for hundreds of years before this point, but the 10th and 11th century were when the development of gunpowder warfare started really taking off. These first grenades, or at least the surviving ones, were half a pound of gunpowder inside a cast iron ball. This proved effective as an incendiary and fragmentation source, but many more were ceramic with gunpowder inside. If this broke apart before exploding, these grenades were of dubious use, but ceramic, when broken, forms very sharp fragments. This would have been an easy way to deal a lot of damage to flesh and even to most armors available at the time. As Europe advanced with gunpowder to new heights, grenades became commonplace, from pirates to Napoleonic armies to the Russo-Japanese War. But eventually they became deemed obsolete, due to the danger in using them and the ineffectiveness of gunpowder. This changed with the invention of primary explosives like TNT and dynamite, especially TNT, which changed the grenade from dangerous to the user to very dangerous to the enemy. The British had the first fragmentation grenade with the Mills bomb, with the shell explicitly designed to break into shards. And with that, the development of fragmentation we see in Fallout have their ancestor. The same does apply to landmines, starting with non-fragmenting caltrops, then through the Chinese with explosive cannonballs with pressure-activated flints, to the primary explosives and chemical fuses of the World Wars. Famously, they were used in the Civil War to terrible effect, light on casualties but heavy on morale. More on them in later episodes. Now, in Fallout 1 and 2, the fragmentation grenade is more of an impact grenade, exploding on contact with a hard surface. It has an internal fragments, as the outer casing is a 3-part smooth affair, but they are pretty deadly early on in both games, if slightly limited. This is closer to the post-war M26 series US grenade. In Fallout Tactics, where the weapons are more or less just real firearms, the fragmentation grenade is the Mark II pineapple grenade, with a contact fuse instead of a timed fuse, which is actually an older design than the M26. The newer design of the M26 series was more effective at even covering using internally notched wire. This notched wire was made much better at making shards that covered the whole cone or lethal area of the grenade. The current series of grenade is not represented in any game, the M33/67 grenade series. The grenades of Fallout 3 and New Vegas, along with the slightly different ones in Fallout 4, are more traditional ones that have a timed fuse and can bounce quite a ways, especially on a very strong throw. The Fallout 3 and New Vegas ones have a mixture of thin sheeting on the top and bottom with a segmented body. Giving the protection of combat armor, especially in the chest, it can be inferred that the heavier chunks were needed to do damage to thicker armor, while the uniform but smaller pieces were fine for unarmored sections. In theory, this would make it better at maiming or at least doing some damage. They have basis on an interwar grenade, in terms of design, the Danish M23 hand bomb. The Frag mine, on the other hand, has very few appearances before Fallout 3. Fallout Tactics is the first game with actual mines, but they mainly used an anti-vehicle mine that would obliterate any character that walked on them, especially early on. But they also had bouncing mines after the bouncing Bettys of the Third Reich. These mines were the pinnacle of fragmentation maiming. They would bounce up to chest height and spread a huge amount of ball bearings all around it. This was one of the most amount of pain and injury per mine. Most mines instead do a lot of damage through primary explosives, and then fragmentations being in close proximity, but the Bouncing Betties and the Claymore of the Vietnam War were all about a wide spread. In Fallout 3 in New Vegas, they are less dangerous and more direct, while being based on the TM-46 anti-tank mine, a Soviet-era mine in visual looks. The ones in-game have a proximity sensor instead of direct trigger, meaning they only explode when shot or approached, and their effective range is much smaller than most mines. But they are also very easily deployed without any fancy arming process, so much so that when the courier explains the process to Deaconess Severus, it is obvious that no one in the Legion has any knowledge of explosives. According to the courier, all you need to do is rush the mine and press the blinking red light. Now back in Fallout 3, the frag grenade and mine did the same amount of damage, but in New Vegas this has changed a little bit. The grenade is far more damaging of the two, dealing a whopping 1 damage with a direct impact, and then exploding for a maximum base damage of 125 at the center of the blast. Enemies around it can be damaged for variable damage, and the area of effect can be increased through the use of perks. The frag mine, on the other hand, has the same 1 damage with a direct impact, and a maximum base damage at the center of the blast of 100. Now, it is important to remember that all explosive damage can be boosted early on by up to 60% with the Demolition Expert perk taken 3 times, and by the time level 10 rolls around. Additionally, as the explosive skill levels up, the fuse for mines are strangely extended, even your own. Now this seems to be based on a base time for each mine, and then is multiplied by some derived statistic from the courier's explosive skill. This does mean that when you have 100 in explosives, the frag mines have to be placed somewhere near the enemies will naturally go, or be done in stealth. By that same token, the grenades are jumpy little things, and outside of VATS, they tend to have a lot of excess velocity, making them tricky to use precisely. Now, in VATS, the mines cannot be placed, but if they could, they have a strange cost of 35 assigned to it. The frag grenades can be used very well in VATS at 24 AP per throw, and with a hit meaning you drop the grenade at their feet, the efficiency is a whopping 5.3 damage per AP. This makes grenades very good in VATS in general, and especially given how common these grenades are, it's quite good. However, in VATS it has a fixed distance that it can't be thrown, although the courier in real time might be able to throw them further. It should be noted that explosive weapons cannot crit, which makes sense given the intentionally imprecise method of damage. They do have normal multipliers, but have no extra crit damage. The frag grenade, like most grenades, will have a rate of fire of 0.65 grenades tossed per second, although most couriers will find themselves doing far less than that sustained maximum. The mines, on the other hand, have a rate of 1 mine per every 2 seconds. If used as a trap, this is more sufficient to blanket an area in a short amount of time, but since mines can chain reaction, usually 2 or 3 is sufficient. Finally, the AoE for these devices is 900 units for the frag grenade and 192 for the frag mine. Now some say that the missiles have a splash radius of 500 units, which they also say is approximately 7.8 yards, but numbers like that will need more scrutiny. I will say in my testing of this weapon and gaining footage for this video, the 900 units for frag grenades was quite large, and especially with the enhanced AoE perk, it made it to where almost every single grenade throw, at least for the ones that weren't far Hail Marys, I was hurting myself, and grenades which I thought were so far away from the enemies did result in kills. Now onto the requirements. They are light, just like these devices, requiring 25 explosives for both, which puts them in the intermediate user tier, but with a strength requirement of 2 for the grenades and 1 for the mine, they make for an excellent backup weapon. They also have a weight of half a unit, meaning they are very easy to lug around, especially for low strength couriers. Now given the size of these things, it is no surprise they are expensive when compared to normal ammo. Prices for even one frag mine at 75 caps is very expensive compared to any other ammo, and all the explosives follow this high cost. The frag grenades are double the price at 150 caps. which given the difference in explosive radius, it makes some form of twisted sense. But considering the damage and this being on the lower end of these explosive devices, the closest competitor is the anti-material rifle. Although its 50 mg is only 6 caps per round, the weapon itself has a base value of 5,600 caps. Since the frag grenade and mines are self-contained packages, they don't need the heavy weapon to fire them. You can carry 40 mines or grenades or a mix for the same weight as the AMR, although if it is all grenades, that means it would cost you 6,000 caps. That being said, they also can't be modded, removing that cost, and they are quite popular for traps, which can be disarmed, meaning most exploration will yield at least some of each before long. Speaking of that, they are almost completely ubiquitous, from the grenade bouquets and minefields, so a skilled and attentive courier can grab several from more dangerous locales. Additionally, there are boxes labeled for explosive boxes, mine boxes, or grenade boxes that give out these energetic goodies by the handful. For those that want to spend money, almost all of the merchants in the game will sell them. But there are some unique versions of the frag grenades for those that want to delve into the green haze around Camp Searchlight. In the basement of the Eastern Church, there is a small box that normally contains 2 mini-nukes. However, for those that have taken the Wild Wasteland trait, they will be replaced with 3 holy frag grenades. An obvious reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which was itself referenced in Fallout 2 with an encounter with the Round Table, and a planned encounter which would get the Chosen one holy hand grenade. But these grenades in Fallout New Vegas are very, very dangerous, with a blast radius of 1,500 and a damage of 800, while maintaining the same stats of the regular frag grenades. Taking the loose cannon trait and splash damage perk will pretty much guarantee the courier's death whenever these grenades are used on flat ground. They explode in a quite pleasing massive orange shell, but the in-game explosions are easy to avoid with a certain line of sight blocking object. They also can be used by a complete novice with no requirements in explosives and can be sold for a laughably cheap price of only 500 caps apiece. In conclusion, the fragmentation explosives are completely the beginner's explosives, despite the skill requirement. From those that know and play Fallout 3, these offer a familiar friend with a complete usability for most, if not the whole game. The mines do become more difficult to use given the longer fuse time based on explosive skill, while grenades definitely grow more and more powerful with more skill and more danger to the courier. Combined with VATS, most grenades will land completely on target, and the additional 25 damage resistance gained in VATS will help you survive. The ability to hit multiple targets is more of a fringe benefit in practice, but for those that like dismemberment, these weapons are for you. However, with the splash damage perk, it does mean that you will hit several enemies with most throws.